I want 2 minutes of your time. Can you put your laptops on your seat and stand up? Let's give ourselves a round of applause. Do this. A round of applause. A round of applause. A round of applause. That's how people who can't hear us make a round of applause. Okay? Thank you very much. Sit down. Before I start introducing names and my story about delivering bad news and what happened to us, I wanted to ask you, assume for a second you pass all exams. Any doubts? You all are passing exams? Awesome. How many of you, show of hands, if you dare, would like to join government? How many of you would like to join multinationals, law firms, Fortune 500 companies? Do you guys want to all be jobless or what? How many of you would like to join SMEs? I don't see any hands up. Okay, how many of you have considered going into food production? I see one. True? How many of you have considered driving a tractor on a farm, going agriculture? Yeah? Awesome. Awesome. So my aim is, by the end of the talk, I have, for food and agriculture, 50% of the room, hands up. Let's see whether or not we succeed on that. Okay, names. Akanksha was very, very kind, and she introduced us as a science-based organization. Actually, the reason why I exist is because we have identified something that we call the nutritional paradox. The nutritional paradox is nothing but a status quo explanation as to where we are today in the state of affairs of agriculture and food, agri-food for short. We live in a world where today we're about 7.6, 7.7 billion people on this planet. And guess what? We produce already enough calories for 10 billion people. Yet we send more than 800 million people hungry to bed every night. Is that just? Is that fair? For sure not. Food security, this big debate that you will hear on the media everywhere, has nothing to do with this planet's production capacity because we already produce enough calories for 10 billion people. Right? So we still have people sick because they don't have access to enough calories. The burden on the other side of the table, people that are sick from eating too much, is literally 3 times as much as those that are hungry today. We have 2.3 billion people being overweight and obese. Every minute, 6 people die from eating too much food. More people die from eating too much food than gunpowder kills every year. That includes war zones, terror, homicide, suicides. Every minute, 6 people. Predominantly, these are all curable diseases by a change of diet. Then we have a cluster of people out there, about 2.8 or so billion people, who really struggle to eat right. They suffer what's called hidden hunger. They don't have the micronutrients in their bellies that they need. Why? Because they're being fed very one-sided nutrition. Hence, they struggle. They might have a perfectly fit, perfectly well-balanced body mass index, but they struggle a lot. And that comes from one fact. We know of 300,000 plants being fit for human consumption. Buckle up. Fasten your seatbelt. 60% of our global calorie supply comes today from 3 crops. 300,000 crops we know are perfectly well for human consumption, yet 60% of our calories are made from 3 crops only. I ask you a very simple question. Can that be healthy? Is that a balanced diet? Surely not. So I actually say that the food and agriculture industry is the biggest supplier to the pharma industry because we produce many, many sick people. And if that would not be enough, the way we actually produce all of this makes our planet sick. 40 to 70% of land is degrading. We are next door to 2 massive big palm oil producers, Indonesia and Malaysia, and they struggle with the palm plantations coming of age, and the land is not productive anymore. Are we letting these palm plantations desert? What about the carbon sink that a palm tree represents? What do we do with the smallholder farming communities? Probably grandfather of the current generation has given their parcel of land to a plantation owner and they received income. But what if this land is not productive anymore? 70% of all what we produce goes in feeding livestock. 77% of all fresh water withdrawals in the world is done by agriculture. 1/3 of all greenhouse gases are emitted by this industry. The list goes on and on and on. We need to change that system. And that is essentially the reason why we have incorporated names. We want to do something about it, but what to do is the big question. It's going to take a gigantic effort from all of us working in partnerships in order to really change the system. Look, folks, what used to be right after the Second World War, feeding a hungry population, Green Revolution came about, and they did a fantastic job, because today the people are still hungry is largely because of political ill will, not production capacity issues. So Green Revolution did a fantastic job, but it's outdated. The KPIs the Green Revolution was after doesn't meet our 21st century lifestyle anymore. So we have to change that. The challenge is gigantic, and what we stand for in NAMES is to look at technologies, science, and strategies to basically alleviate sustainably these burdens I was talking about. And that's what gets us to work every day. That's what motivates all of us at NAMES in the morning. So what we actually do and how we go about it is, in short, we take science and technology, move fast forward with those, but also at the same time go back to basics. We actually have what I call a 3-layered integration approach, wherein we think of how can we actually redesign comfort food that we love so much. Show of hands, how many of you consume at least once in a week instant noodles? Don't lie. We took instant noodles on. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Why don't you eat 2 or 3 or 4 portions of instant noodles in a week? You do? Hand on heart, you do. Is this healthy? Okay, la? So what's the la? If it is okay, what's the la? It's not too bad. Anybody have a different opinion? Do you know that 80% of instant noodles are deep fried? You're eating essentially 20% of vegetable oil in the noodle. That's the sort of questions we ask in our company at Names to say, why do we do that? How can we actually overcome it? And then we use breakthrough innovation and science to actually go into this and figure out how we can come up with technologies that are not outdated anymore. Because instant noodles, deep frying of instant noodles is a technology that's 80 years old. It was invented after the Second World War. Because it's a very cheap and cheerful process to get the water out of the noodle, so it's not fresh anymore and is stable, and you can distribute it without cold chain in between. So what can we do in order to replace that is a big question. And that with a product that costs in West Africa $0.15. There's not much margin in there that you can play around with. So any technology that you invent has to be very, very impactful in commercial terms. Otherwise, you're just inventing for creation of new knowledge, which is in commercial sense not really good enough. Then we use, if we find these technologies, then we use another approach, the third layer, which is actually diversifying, using crops that actually grow on these degraded arable lands, so that we actually rejuvenate the land and bring smallholder farming communities' income back so that actually can strive with new income. Does that make sense? Our case study, I'll take you to the instant noodles in a little bit more detail now. So we have invented a technology about 5 years ago. Actually, 7 years ago, I had this idea. I was walking through the factory of the world's largest instant noodle factory. 5 billion portions a year makes the factory alone. That's the entire consumption of India. One factory. There is, no kidding, a train on that factory site that takes workers from here to over there. I mean, there's a little bit of show as well. They could also take a bicycle to do that, but they have a train. You go on a balcony, you look into that factory, and the only thing you see is actually stainless steel. Gigantic. Bang, 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 bang. Tons of vegetable oil in there. 720 pieces a minute times 25 lines. Huge undertaking. So this is when I had this idea, and this girl that actually showed me around was very proud. She said, look, in our region, we are the producer with the lowest fat content. And I said, so what is it? And she said, 18%. And then I had this idea to say, goodness me, what they are using actually is palm oil, because that's the only oil that survives that harsh frying process. And they have 18% in there. Isn't there a business opportunity, was my first thought. If we replace the deep frying process, you save the oil, you'll basically get an additional profit pool going that then is available to you. That was the creation of this. 6, 7 years later, today we are in a situation where we can actually proudly tell you that we have finally succeeded in closing the loop. What does that mean? We took a technology, and for literally 18 months, 2 years, we were researching in the wrong direction. We stopped, had to walk back, after about $1 million invested in it, had to walk back and redirect our effort into doing things differently. We invented something that was on a benchtop, this size, one portion we could make at a time. And then we walked out to customers and showed it as prototypes. Today we have a factory in Iskandar, Malaysia, where we have our own production capacity of about 300,000 portions. We're scaling up right now to about 1.5 million portions. And our first commercial partner, call him customer, installs, as we are speaking, our first industrial line capable of doing 300 million portions using our technology. So what is it that we actually have achieved? We actually went in, and I need to be mindful of time. I could talk about this technology forever. So what we have done is we actually eliminated palm oil from the process. We took the deep fryer out. We invented a technology that fits on the same footprint as an existing deep fryer. Therefore, because air drying, vice versa deep frying, is a problem. Air drying takes 45 minutes, deep frying 4.5 minutes. So you end up, if you air dry, with 10 times less capacity or a 10 times bigger factory. Neither of the two is commercially viable. So our challenge was to invent something that fits on top of the deep fryer. Take deep fryer out and put our stuff in. That's what we have achieved. So the sort of impact that we now generate is nothing less but actually being able to produce an instant noodle free of palm oil, 5% sunflower oil, which is beneficial for our health. We took out empty calories worth a 15 minutes jog, so you can eat 2 portions if you want to gain weight. Good news. If we would weigh up all the plant protein that we need in order to produce these 1 billion portions, 1.25 billion portions, it equals to the weight of 2 Eiffel Towers. And by doing that, we rehabilitate and save primary forest enough to get actually 1,000 orangutans their natural habitat back or preserve it.